taking the time today. It's been beautiful. We're really looking forward to it. How's it going?
It's good. As you mentioned, a bit of a rush. I mean, I think anyone in New York this week has a glimpse of what it feels like to, as you said, navigate through all the events and so much happening. But yeah, I found a really nice spot. I'm near the Brooklyn Bridge here in the park. See it? So it's beautiful. Thank you for having me.
I, no, absolutely. Thank you for taking the moment to catch up, to check in. Obviously, what better occasion to have a beautiful new piece that's live and unfolding. And I think amongst the madness of New York right now, as you said, it kind of like pulling it all in and being amongst what the physical ramifications and manifestations of this beautiful thing that we're all building. It's a moment of peace, of zen in the work, the interface. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but this is a new fantastic work that's now on Foundation. As I said, if you go navigate to the top of foundation.app homepage or any of these tweets we've been linking to, it's a beautiful new work that's kind of coming out and giving that quintessential P1xelfool visualization and a musical just soundtrack to go alongside in a synth form. It's really fantastic, and can't believe a better opportunity in the midst of a more maddening week to have and catch up with you. It's been, I think, is this our, maybe we've done a context, a setting before, but I think this is the first time we've ever spoken directly. So yeah, really looking forward to it. So many questions, so many ideas this work generates, and really excited.
Well, thank you so much for all the words. It's a special project. Um, I've been a huge fan of Love Putin's work for quite some years, and I think at some point I felt that it was natural to reach out. If there's something that I've learned, like in the past a lot of months, is how much artists are always willing to collaborate. I think it's one of the beautiful things that happen in the NFT space because suddenly I felt, especially being from Brazil and always feeling a bit disconnected from everything. Suddenly, we all we all see a bunch of artists way more open to communicate and willing to work together to create something new. So that alone is something for me to celebrate. I think, I mean, I think New York has been a good demonstration of that this week because we are clearly going through a difficult period in the market with all the coins going down and things like this. But you can clearly feel how the artists are still really concerned about the art and about keep working and bringing beautiful stuff to the world. So yeah, I feel like something to celebrate. To just keep making art and things that I love. And as I mentioned, I've been a fan of Love Hutin's work for a long time. And at some point, a few months ago, we decided that it would make sense to make something together.
It's amazing. I'm so glad you guys did. I feel like I'm gonna when we get the chance to speak so intimately, and like you say, I actually had the chance of you coming. It was at Bright Moments on Monday in New York, and I don't know how often you find yourself in New York, but it felt like such an occasion that you're here, and getting part of that conversation. I feel like it was a glance at what I want to keep expounding on and keep digging into. And I'll start with the first thing you mentioned, which is the Brazilian context around your work and your geographical insight. How have you felt like it? Have you? I guess how rare is it for you to come out this way? How's that exchange been? Or yeah, how are things in Brazil in the crypto scene nowadays? How are NFTs kind of affecting that world?
Um, yeah, no, to like be in the U.S. to be in New York is something that started to happen way more after the whole NFT thing. I've been at Art Basel at the end of the year in Miami. I've been in New York 3 months ago. I'm now here again, and I've been coming way more than I used to come. And all my visits to the U.S. before this used to be like just for pleasure, not business. And I had the pleasure to meet a few Brazilian people this week here as well. But in general, I feel that at least from my perspective, I've been seeing way more Brazilian artists showing their work outside of the Brazilian circuit in the past year. Um, yeah, I mean, I think as I mentioned, it feels like we and I'm 100% sure that it's not just for Brazilian artists, but for artists all over the world, from like especially from the global south. It feels like the NFT space opened a lot of doors that were not open before. Um, and yeah, I think from seeing the experiences of friends that are always close to me, I can feel, of course, you always see, we know that not our artists have the same experience. Some are more lucky than others. I feel extremely lucky to have the opportunity to um, come to New York, for example, be at bright moments, and have sometimes the spotlight. I think it's something rare and that I appreciate so much. But in general, I feel like in different doses, you can see people populating global spaces more than before.
Yeah, it's a beautiful effect, and obviously, it seems like a flag you've flown quite high in your work, and appreciate all the Brazilian creators at Foundation, and how kind of I think inspirational your work has been, just to that connection and that real like global effect of NFTs that we witness here and really appreciate. Your site says it describes you as an early internet artist, and I think we're just trying always to interpret that and feel this state of early and future, and obviously your work speaks and lives between these worlds of, I think, like the so many contexts. Maybe I just would let you explain what how do you define early internet artists and your work and your practice for people who are just tuning in today.
That's it's actually interesting because I think the internet has always been like my main source of populating my work, and I've been doing this very in a shy way. I, I mean, as I mentioned, I feel like I've never seen myself as someone connected, or I would not see the possibility to relate to the international scene. And but what is funny about what you mentioned is that usually I used to describe myself as an internet artist from 2001 because I feel like with the internet you kind of uh, at least in my perspective, I feel kind of lost in the sense of time. Like things navigate in such a fast stream and in all sorts of direction that um, it's crazy to try to define time. Like, and that's why I've always used like this date in the future. But yeah, I mean, I've been listening, putting my work on the internet for a long time. I've my biggest inspiration is net art. I love net artists. We have like Rick Silva here, for example, which has been huge inspiration. Nicholas Sassoon, Rafael Rosendahl. I mean, there are so many artists that have been doing amazing internet art in the past like decades, and I think they are the artists that I feel way more are the artists that I feel really inspired by, and also I feel like my work would not exist without the internet. right? Although I'm always um, talking about how I do generative art and how code is the basis of my practice, I still feel like the internet is the place that the only place it could exist and be populated as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some fabric there that you guys are all pulling from, and you mentioned some greats that you stand right alongside, like the contemporaries in that world, that foundation are really remarkable, and just how much fodder can kind of be created from that. But before we get into your production, I kind of wanted to ask, like, since 2001, how have you seen like identity on the internet develop? Because obviously there's characters like Raphael using like his first and last legal name and all these different kind of translations I feel like that have existed over time, from Tumblr scenes to all different kind of like internet digital communities. How have you arrived as an early internet Brazilian artist coming into Web3 over the last like 20 years or so? How have you kind of seen that identity develop, and how's that been like a material for your work? Because it just feels so present. It feels like Pixel Fool is like this enigmatic presence in the work as well.
That's that's a difficult question, but yeah, I mean, I feel like uh, probably a lot of what I've been doing is inspired by them because I feel like this whole idea of, for example, digital identity has been has been fed and built by these early artists ever since then. Like you could see how the websites would translate so well the body of work, and you would see also artists using um, you would see artists using their little names, but also see artists building identities, like I don't know, Jody, for example. Um, so I have a sense that maybe the Web3 is an extension of that, of using. We've been seeing digital identity growing in the past years. Like we have people living their lives like if it was for social media. We have been seeing living people making body interventions based on uh, uh, filters from like apps. So I feel that yeah, the internet is this place that allows you to be like a character, to shape your image as you wish, differently from the like maybe the rules of the physical world, if we can differentiate like that. I'm just using a word that is understandable, but like this difference between the digital world and the analogic world. So yeah, I feel like Web3 is trying to build the ways to create your digital identity maybe in the best possible way and creating tools for that. But it feels like an extension of what artists have been doing forever.
Totally, and I think you found a really unique way of doing it, which speaks as uniquely to the aesthetic quality of your work. And I feel, yeah, just if you could spend a bit of time talking about how you make your work, it was really incredible hearing about you on Monday. Maybe, yeah, for those who are less familiar, and however much you want to show us under the hood. I should also say there may be difficult questions, and there's only two of us here, so there's no one else to pawn them off on. You can totally pass if ever a question doesn't feel like something you want to answer. I have plenty to get to, so please, yeah, whatever you're feeling. How do you make your work, or how do you feel about your production into NFTs?
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Um, so, well, to those that are not familiar, I've been doing um, basically all my pieces that have been released in the past a year or so. Like I've started to release works under Pixel Fool in uh, April the 7th of last year. I used to have like another body of work. But when I decided to start to release my works aspects of all, I defined a few rules to what I wanted to do. So most of my works, or all of my works, are under very restricted. They are created in very restricted resolutions, small resolutions, and then they are scaled up to work at high resolution displays. So they are like low resolution works, but for high resolution displays, there are a lot of the inspiration comes from obsolete technology. That is something that I love. Analogic displays, mechanical displays, things like that. And I create everything using code. So my main tool is this framework called processing. It's a code environment to create visual output. And so basically, absolutely everything that I do is done with processing using code. Uh, but curiously, most of the works that I've been releasing as NFTs are actually GIFs. It's just a format that I really love that I think reflects really well this. Um, it feels like something that could only work on the internet, right? I mean, it is, but I feel deeply involved with GIFs, and that's why I usually release them as GIFs instead of actual software. But for this piece, which is the interface, we decided to have something running in real time. So um, the interface is a mix of a synth and also a real time art software. So inside you have Raspberry Pi running processing in real time, and everything is just like code showing the work while you are playing with song as well.
Beautiful, yeah. I think are all like very impressive foundation. That interpretation you've taken of processing and like Casey Reese's like vision of how this was going to play out, and like you say, like it's innately an internet language that you developed, and I think that's maybe one sidebar question, because I feel that work with obsolete technology, like you say, and bit art and pixels, you bring that mechanical display quality into NFTs and onto the blockchain, and this context of net art now is like believe preserved in a way that it hadn't been. Obviously, we've worked with Bitform's gallery and places that are trying to envision that future for how you sell the internet or how you sell art that's inspired by the internet. And I just wonder how kind of intentional to your work do you feel the provenance and the archive of this on the internet is to your NFTs? Is it in communication? Do you prefer to play with like the temporariness of it, or does it give you a lot of like kind of reverence, the permanence and the cementing of these technologies now on the blockchain?
Well, I don't think I have like an obsession with the permanence of the work. I think there are a lot of people that are really concerned with things like, oh, I, I don't know, I just collect art that is on chain, so only code on chain, like art blogs. I think it's something really special. I'm a big art blogs collector. I love art blogs, but it's not something that concerns me that much. At the same time, so I mean, I, we know that IPFS is a really nice system. It's something that I'm super concerned to preserve my work. I'm constantly pinning my work on to make sure that the work will last. Because while it's not an obsession, and I still think that it's really important to use the technology to preserve. As someone that loves net art, for example, I'm constantly going back to the Horizon archive to try to see work, and sometimes I'm sometimes the artwork disappears, or sometimes you cannot find something that you used to love, and it's important to as an spectator. So I think it's in that sense, if we can use technologies like the blockchain to make sure that the work is preserved, that's really amazing. It's something that we should use. And given the fact that digital art relies way more on the internet than on institutions or institutional conservation, I think it's something that we have to look with care for. And in the sense, anything is welcome, right? I think the blockchain has this role of helping us to make sure that we keep history preserved.
Absolutely. And gifts, what better form? Gifts are just fantastic and very close to our hearts here. How you said you love gifts, like what? I don't. If you have anything more to add, I just think that's really impressive and like, yeah, figurative part of your work. Obviously, if you don't, if it's just that, and gifts are great, happy for it. But I think any color you can add to like what really first appealed to you about gifts or how that feels as a format for your work.
Um, well, I think that as someone that loves art, I've always, and I don't know, I think I've been amazed by gifts way before I even knew what art was. I think I didn't have like a big um, art education. I didn't used to go to museums as a kid or things like that. My family doesn't have a big relationship with art. But in some sense, when I discovered that you could populate the internet with visual forms, it somehow felt magical to me. Like I remember going to these interactive websites and thought of something that I really would like to do. And eventually, when I learned that I could also spread things that I would not call art, and I barely would know what that you would have like digital art. It felt special, and then after many years of living as an artist, beyond that, I feel like it's such interesting format. You have first you have control of the timing. You have control over the palette in a very specific way, so it gives you precision. It works really, really well with hard edges, big pixels. Those are all things that I think help to translate what I have as a thinking about my art. So um, I'm constantly mentioning that I'm really interested in understanding time perception and how our perception works. Um, um, and to me, it always felt interesting to play with looping works, things that you could look at and not be exactly sure where it begins and where it ends. Um, I used to make experimentations with um, gifts that were exactly the same but at different time lengths, and to try to see how I would perceive them. Like if I maybe change this characteristic, if I have a flashing pixel, if I have something like this or that. I feel like gifts, they they give this perspective, this set tool that allow me to experiment with those concepts. Also, one of the reasons I'm always mentioning this as well, but one of the reasons why I love to work with chunky pixels is because I feel you have this block of light in front of you in your screen, and somehow that enhances the physicality of light. I'm very interested in having the screen not as a mediator, but as this real experience, not as something that is representing something, but that is creating a phenomena. And I think gifts, for example, allow you that as well. Like you have this really defined edges that suddenly, when you're displaying these big blocks of light, you have this experience that is very unique.
I love it. Yeah, I think Chunky Pixels is my new band name. I also was definitely hypnotized to that quality that you're describing. I had at one point last year a Pixel Fool work as the wallpaper on my phone, and I felt like I was pulled to that outcome by just this kind of like hypnotic quality of it. And I feel that in that brightness and that kind of like, and you're in a dark room and you have it pulled up, it gives that just yeah, really piercing directness, which it's incredible in your work. I think you also started to speak, not to move past the aesthetic quality, but your work outside of your artwork and kind of how you come to the blockchain and cryptocurrency early on. Just wondering if you'd spend a second, because it was great hearing you talk about it, Bright Moments. How, I think, were you saying it was as a freelancer, or that there'd been like a previous life in which you were earning dollars or currencies and converting them into crypto, and how that kind of inspired your future with NFTs?
Yeah. So although I've been like I've had my art practice for a long time. I went to art school 17, 18 years ago, and although art has always been like something that I love, I used to pay my bills as a designer. And because of that, I would eventually I started to work for companies outside Brazil, especially companies in the U.S. And I realized when I started to do that, I realized that transferring money from anywhere outside Brazil would be such a pain. Like at the time, we would have to pay so many taxes to the banks. We would have like to so many fees to the banks. We would have to wait like sometimes for 15 days to receive your money. And then I realized that I found this very specific company that would give you a U.S. bank account where your contractors could send the money and they would immediately convert in Bitcoin and send to a wallet that you specified. So because of that, I suddenly saw this chance of moving from the banking system to something that was instantaneous, that would not only at the time not only I would not pay any fees for the banks, but also because Bitcoin was way more popular in the US than in Brazil, there was this difference, this arbitrage where Bitcoin would be more expensive in Brazil, so I would even earn a little bit more. So all of that together made me really stick with cryptocurrency and start to try to learn more about them and how they work and all of this. But curiously, I only heard about NFTs. So all this that I mentioned was like 6, 7 years ago. But I only heard about NFTs at the end of 2020, I think, with all the big news, and then decided that I, well, I thought that as I think an opportunity to explore something that finally would allow me to sell my work, which was digital. I was working with this curator for 2 years, trying to understand how I could fit my work in the institutional space or galleries, and it was really like difficult to me to think where and how that could happen. And then because I knew about crypto and I saw a lot of things happening, I suddenly realized, oh, okay, maybe there's something for me there, and I could try this new thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think that you found that kind of like perfect pace between artwork and code and your careers and how I think like you just speak to that internationalness of the global movement of NFTs, global movement of cryptocurrency, and how it's like along for the ride. I think one last origin conversation. I feel like we have to keep it moving here because we haven't even gotten to the work at hand. For everyone just tuning in, check it out at the top of foundation.app, Pixel Fool's interface. We're getting into all sides, which feels like catching up with an old friend. It's been so long since kind of caught up. How is your opinion of painting with pixels really like different in your work? Obviously, we see like pixel artists and kind of a more manual approach, and your coding. What kind of layer has the generative art quality and the future kind of given to you in the last few months, and obviously the evolution of NFTs at large? Where's your inspiration these days for generative art and your pixel practice?
I think that a lot of well, of course, there are an endless number of artists that I look at and inspires me. Like it's even impossible to mention which of them inspire me because there are so many. As a lot of people know, I try to be as much as I try to be to be a collector as much as I am an artist because I love to like collect the work of friends and other artists because they're constantly inspiring me. But I think what is really what get me to generative art first when I discovered that I could use randomness to generate artwork in the way that generative art or code-based art or algorithm art works. It was really mind-blowing to me. But beyond that, at some point in my art career, I decided that I wanted to be a painter. I was like studying painting for 2 years, and I had like a painting background in school as well. But at some point, it was something really serious to me. I was painting a lot, and I always liked the idea of painting, but to some extent, I think painting was never this natural thing to me. This I could never make painting an expressive practice as I wanted because I mean I look to artists that can paint that well, and it doesn't matter if it's like in digital art or if it's pixel art, if it's the canvas. I've always looked to artists that can paint in a very expressive way with big admiration. But to me, it never worked. I would be so constrained when I was in front of a canvas. But I think that probably because of my intimacy with computers, uh, code worked to me like this extension, um, this expressive tool, and I even sometimes ask friends about this because it's this interesting thing that happens to me that sometimes I'm typing code and trying to solve something, and sometimes I see myself typing before I can even think exactly what I want to do. I mean, it just feels so natural. So I think to me, art with code became this tool that I've always wanted to be as expressive and natural and an extension of my thinking process as a tool could be.
Incredible. Yeah, I think there's a lot among that scene here, and you do it best, and really among the best of them. You already shouted out Nicholas Sassoon, who invited you to Foundation. Obviously, nice to see you guys both in the same building at Bright Moments. Also, much like Nicholas, you're an avid collector as well as creator. I think it just like comes with the territory of your work, and seems like it's so inspiring to so many folks, not only like to see your work, but then be collected by you, which just wanted to appreciate that. I think it's like an unsung beauty to like being a part of NFTs and obviously the community at Foundation. It's incredible to see all the works you've collected. Now I guess I can draw a line. I feel like we've done the origin story. There could be many movies of your origin story already, but we're going to jump into the present projects. The interface again at the top of Foundation.app. Everyone should check it out. It's a beautiful synth and vision and sound and I just code work that feels connective on so many bounds that we had to take a chance to talk about it. I think we can squarely spend the next 20 minutes on it alone. It's combining obviously your generative art and this level of performance and interactivity that we're just so impressed by at Foundation. Uh, Maybe you can speak to what the collaboration was like, where it came from, because I really feel that enter kind of dimensionality of the 2D surface that I don't know, it feels like maybe NFTs or the computer puts us in front of has been broken, and this interdisciplinary musical combination. Yeah, give us more background. I know you tried to start to get into it earlier and I stopped you, but take it away.
No, no, that's fine. Well, I think as well, any collaborative work that I've done in the past, it comes from admiration of others. And in the case of Laputa, I mean, I think I really love his work. I've been deeply inspired by all kinds of sound art. I think I've also mentioned this a few times, but I think my very first creative practice was music and not any other visual art form. My grandfather used to be a musician and would have a lot of instruments all over the place, and because of that, I got really interested in music. I almost became like at some point when I was like a teenager, I wanted to be a professional musician. I almost went to music school to be a trumpetist. And
Amazing.
yeah, that didn't work. I passed all the exams, but at some point, the professors advised me to drop the school because I used brackets at the time, and they told me that I would like completely mess my mouth, and maybe I should come back after removing them. But so music has always been like a huge inspiration. I love music. I play the piano. I'm constantly experimenting with audio synthesis. So I have like this deep interest for instruments, for music and sound devices. And I think I was just familiar with Bob Hoofman's work. At some point, I reach out and say, "Oh, I love your work. I think maybe there is something that could work between us." And then a few months ago, he said, "Okay, let's do something together. I love your work." And we did this synth that was inspired by um, the NES, the Nintendo NES, and that was not for sale. We did it just like as a fun project. It was something that he wanted to have in his archive. It was such a great experience. And I feel like, I mean, I really love gifts. It's something that I love, but also there is this part of me that really appreciates software art, software based art. So I felt like having um, real-time art running with a sound system in the form that he usually gives to all of his projects felt just natural, and it would be amazing, and that was it. Like, and then we decided that we could maybe also make something to release as an NFT, because the reception of the previous project that we did together was so nice, and that a lot of people would ask if they could buy the SIM, and also if I'm natural to release something also like we just did with Interface.
It's beautiful. I only comment, started to lose you about halfway through that answer. I think we got all of the context, but yeah, if I don't know if that was closer to the mic or further away, or we could experiment with hearing you better. Just started to lose you right there in the middle. I think that collaboration and that continuation that you guys have been building towards Love's work. Also, thank you for bringing Love into the foundation system. I believe this is the first NFT split collaboration in the market so far. It brings to mind, just like looking at the work earlier, everyone should check it out. Check out the links. It's kind of like a computer art made into a computer instrument was what we were thinking here, and it feels just super synergistic and beautiful to like the pursuits you guys have independently. And appreciate that background. What are you thinking like about this thread line? Like, how does you spoke about mechanical displays earlier and like kind of going into that physicality? How does that feel for you? How do you kind of like contextualize them? Is it something that you're like building and playing with regularly, or is it something you feel like an occasion that like can happen every once in a blue moon? How's the experience been? Has it been something that like feels like can we expect more to come? I guess just as a an anxious fan, I have to ask.
Uh, yeah, no, I think that, I mean, as anyone that love computers, I think it's natural to also love hardware. I'm a big nerd, and I before deciding that I wanted to be an artist or a designer, I used to say that I was going to be an electrical engineer. I used to like unmount stuff and mount stuff again and break them, and have my mom blaming me for breaking stuff at home. Um, and we have this whole field of new media art with amazing artists doing all sorts of installations. And I think that after everything that happened last year, with luckily I've been able to make um, my 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 career as an artist something financially sustainable. I find myself in the position to try to explore more things with more time, and going through different routes. And that's the case with hardware-based work. I think I would love to keep exploring more of this. I would love to see my work being displayed in places different than um, our regular devices. So yeah, I mean, it's just a different type form, and a different art form, and it's something that I'm deeply fascinated by. I think that playing with um, some obsolete technologies, they are super not primitive, but you have the ability to talk to some devices and to write code to some devices and interact with some devices in a way that is so close to the core to the device that it feels like this beautiful relation to the machines. I think there's something really poetic in circuits and the way hardware is made. It's been always fascinating to me how things can. I mean, to me, it's crazy. Like people put parts together, and suddenly you have something that works, right? So to be able to interact with that with my work is something that I really appreciate. With the interface, I've used a Raspberry Pi 4, which is the latest model of Raspberry Pi, and processing stopped providing official support to the Raspberry Pi a few editions ago. And so to make all of this to work, I would have to like go after all the possible things to make it work properly. The drivers, the to use the terminal and use commands, and then to adjust the code. So there is this whole exchange with the machine that is not super. It's not as fluid with high efficiency computer with high end computers where things will just run automatically. That I think it's this thoughtful process that I really enjoy. Like uh, you feel some sort of like conversation. Some I think it feels very. I don't know. I feel like this. It's funny because sometimes I will open the terminal to type anything that I need, and I feel like a hacker. I don't know. I think it's this to some extent. There's the you have the poetic of the machines that is something that interests me, but also there is this childish approach of creating something that feels magical.
Yeah, totally. I think you touch upon a lot of that context of the software and the hardware combining, and that context on Raspberry Pi is really cool. Definitely, you've been speaking about it in your work, and also the physical nature of building something that's like kind of bound, like similar to your software, which if it's no longer supported or it's kind of at the limits of ability or access, and you're trying to work within those bounds, and then also you have a physical item here like in a synthesizer and a piece of hardware that is not an iPhone that you can do everything on. Constantly in music we're hearing like, oh, I just got an iPad and it's going to unlock every sound in the world for me, but playing with a toy or an instrument or a piece of machinery that gives you all of that, it's such an interesting I don't know, like almost inundating amount of possibility, which are really just from already seeing these glimpses of the piece that you guys built, the interface. It feels like it's playing in this real sandbox that's beautiful and kind of imaginative and amazing. I think I also just wanted to ask probably one last question. I know I've spent a bunch of time on a ton of different directions, but how the generative art nature plays into what is a generative machine, right? Like your work on its own in coding and all the inputs that you're giving it, porting out these beautiful videos. How do you see that now being human in a synthesizer? How does that feel to kind of like see that control or give that human kind of touch to the generative process of like generating sound and visual as this work does?
Well, I think a lot of my joy of working with generative art is during the process of working with this, because I think the randomness involved in the process allow you to be constantly surprised by the system that we're creating, and I think it is nice to also have systems where other people beyond yourself can interact with it. Like so, with this work, I think the idea was exactly that to provide something to the collector, uh, where the collector can interact with the piece and have something that was specifically built for that purpose, with no interference, with just the work and just the sound and all this tactile experience that was made specifically for this purpose and nothing else. So I think it's about that. It's about trying to share uh, the experience of generative art. Of course, that could be built in many ways. You have like real time work running on browsers and other devices, the mobile phones. But I think it was just this. Like I really enjoy the process of interacting with my work, and I would love to see other people doing the same.
Absolutely. If it comes out as great as this, I hope everyone listening and beyond can take advantage and find the collaboration in such a fruitful way as you have. It's been beautiful. I think we're probably going to wind down here soon. I haven't been finding many questions coming from the audience on Twitter. If there's any that anyone wants to tweet at us, please be happy to get into some of them in the last minutes. Obviously, the work is on Foundation. Thank you so much for hosting it here. Thank you for bringing love into the spectrum of what's happening here in the community. Everyone should check out the interface on top of Foundation.app. It's been a really beautiful chance to see the work and feel the latest in Pixel Fool's world. Obviously, as you're an NFT NYC, taking the time with us, it's really appreciated. We are coming up upon an hour. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you have lots to do and people to see, but maybe like kind of one context we like to end on is anything you'd have to suggest, any words you'd share of wisdom if you go back in time, or for artists or collectors listening in, any resourceful kind of bite that you could give of insight on what to expect or how to carry yourself, or lessons you've learned. Anything you'd want to share today would be great.
I think that there's something that this work reflects a lot. That is something that I've learned late in my career that I found really inspiring. That is how much people are always willing to, how much like artists are always looking for these bridges, and uh, to me is really a pleasure to be able to collaborate with people that I love the work. And I think it's really different than just working by yourself, because you learn so much about the other artists that you're working with. So yeah, I just think um, it's always worth to like to be collaborating with other people. I feel it's one of the joys of work with art, and uh, working on the system where there is a lot of freedom from both sides, and it's this really great exchange.
Absolutely, words to live by. Anything else you want to share as well? Sorry, I should offer. That was a really open-ended one, but if there was anything we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about, please feel free to take us on that journey. The stage is yours, and if you have nothing, I can wrap it up for us. I know we've been pulling words out of you constantly. You must be out and about and wild as it has been on a Wednesday of this week.
No, it's all good. Well, I just really appreciate the the constant support of Foundation. I really, I know that the beat that the worker had received is anonymous, but I kind of know who the person is, so I know the person is listening. I just would like to really thank collectors that have been supporting my art. I'm really grateful to see this work uh, moving forward to hands that appreciate it as much as I do. It's always amazing. It keeps surprising me that people are willing to relate to my work, and I know I'm sure that Hootens feel in the same way. So yeah, thank you to the collectors, and thank you for having me here. It's been like, as you mentioned, it's been a long time, and it's always amazing to talk about art in general.
Amazing to have you. Thank you for taking it with us and seeing this very special edition of New Arrivals. This is Foundation's chance to take the Twitter space direction into a real deep dive with a creator really symbolic to what's going on here. And what better case with yourself, Pixel Fool, just really a hallmark of what's going on in the Foundation generative art, pixel art, net art scene, everything combined, and your work is just so representative of everything. You're doing it at its possible best. And yes, congratulations to you both on this piece and bringing it out there. I can't wait to see the auction conclusion, as well as OX8BD on the bid. Really looking forward to it. Hope you have a fantastic NFT NYC if I don't see you again. Thank you all for tuning in on this busy week, and we'll be back soon. Check it out, topfoundation.app, the interface. This has been Moment with Pixel Fool. I'm Charles, and yeah, thank you guys for tuning in today. See you soon. See you out there. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.